Room 313, Part 1, Welcome to the Silence. His name was Eric. 32 years old, recently divorced, no kids, and not many friends. After losing his job as a salesman at an appliance store, he grabbed the first thing that popped up on a job site, night shift receptionist at a small mid-range hotel on the south side of town. It wasn't exactly where he thought he'd be in his 30s, but it paid the rent. And honestly, the silence of the night was a relief compared to the constant noise of the life he left behind. The place was called the Eliseo Residence, an old building with a faded concrete facade and rusted metal letters spelling out its name. 3 floors, an ancient elevator, narrow hallways with worn-out carpet, and that slight musty smell that no cleaning product could ever really get rid of. During the interview, the manager, a strict older woman named Mrs. Dwyer, made it clear that nights were usually slow. "Night shift's quiet," she said with a tired little smile. "Almost nobody checks in after midnight. Your biggest enemy here is boredom, kid." She was right. For the first few weeks, Eric spent most of his shifts reading old magazines from the reception desk, watching the security cameras, or scrolling his phone just to pass the time. The lobby stayed dead silent, interrupted only by the occasional groan of the elevator going up or down. But then, things started to change. First signs. It was a Wednesday, 2:17 a.m. when the doorbell buzzed. Eric glanced at the camera feed and saw a man standing just outside wearing a black overcoat. No luggage. Weird. Not exactly the kind of guest you expected at that hour. He opened the door. "Need a room for the night," the man said, his voice flat, almost mechanical. Trying to stay professional, Eric took his info. Name, Daniel Mercer. ID checked out. Everything looked normal. He handed over the key to room 3113, 3rd floor. "Elevator works, but if you prefer, you can take the stairs." "Stairs?" Daniel said, barely making eye contact. Eric watched him climb slowly, one step at a time, barely making a sound. Something about him just felt wrong, but Eric couldn't put his finger on it. The next morning, when the day shift arrived, Eric mentioned the guest to his co-worker, Sarah. "Mr. Mercer? That's odd. Room 313 was empty this morning, and no one checked out." Eric frowned. They checked together. The room was spotless, bed perfectly made, not a wrinkle out of place. "You're sure you gave him 313? Sarah asked. "Positive. I even wrote it in the log." But in the system, nothing, no name, no payment, like Daniel Mercer was never there at all. The repeat 3 days later, it happened again. Same man, same hour, same black overcoat, same blank expression. Eric felt the chill even before the buzzer rang this time. When he checked the camera feed, the coffee nearly slipped from his hand. It was him. Eric hesitated, but opened the door. "Evening. I'll take a room, please." Exactly the same words. "Have you stayed here before?" Eric asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "Not that I remember." The man smiled faintly, a smile that felt more like a twitch than anything warm. With shaking hands, Eric handed him the key to room 313 again. This time, curiosity, or maybe fear, got the better of him. He waited about 20 seconds, then crept up the stairs behind the man, careful to stay out of sight. When he got to the 3rd floor, the hallway was empty, silent, still. Eric walked to room 313. The door was slightly ajar. He pushed it open. Empty. The bed was made. No luggage, no signs anyone had been there. Eric rushed back down, checked the system. Nothing. No Mercer, no transaction. And then he noticed something else. The key to room 313 was back on its hook behind the desk. Part 2, Cameras and Silence. That night, Eric decided not to mention what he had seen, or what he thought he had seen, to anyone. The key reappearing on the hook, the empty room. It was all too strange to put into words without sounding insane. He slept during the day, but kept waking up from nightmares. Dark hallways, doors opening by themselves, and a figure standing at the far end of the corridor, completely still, staring without eyes. The next night, he showed up to work earlier than usual. Roxanne was finishing her shift and immediately noticed how pale he looked. "You okay, Eric?" "Yeah, just didn't sleep well. Weird dreams." She gave him a sympathetic smile. "This place does that to you?" "There was one time, I swear, I heard someone whisper my name in the first-floor bathroom when the whole hotel was empty." He chuckled, but it felt forced. After Roxanne left, Eric decided to do something he hadn't done since he started working there: go through the security footage from the night before. He fast-forwarded the lobby camera to 2:17 a.m. There he was, sitting behind the desk, and then getting up and opening the front door. But the image outside showed nothing, just the empty sidewalk. No man in a black coat, no movement at all. Even worse, there was Eric, reaching out like he was handing over a key, speaking, smiling, and then walking back to the counter. Alone. He froze. Rewound the footage, played it again. Same thing over and over. There was no one there, just him, acting like he was checking in an invisible guest. Hands shaking, he switched to the third-floor hallway camera. At exactly 2:20 a.m., nothing. Empty corridor. And then, static. A flicker. And for maybe 2 seconds, a dark blur appeared by room 313's door. The screen glitched again and returned to normal. Empty hallway. Eric closed the camera feed and leaned back, breathing hard. He wasn't someone who scared easily, but something about that hotel was wrong. Deeply wrong. Old records. The next night, determined to dig deeper, Eric rummaged through the old filing cabinet behind the front desk. Most of the folders were from years ago, back when they used to keep paper records before everything went digital. He searched for anything related to room 313. After almost an hour, he found a folder labeled 2009. Inside, a guest form stained with age, and the name Claude Noguera. Same name, same ID number. The form said, checked in June 5th, 2009. No recorded checkout. No signature. No payments on file, no notes from the staff. On the back of the paper, written in shaky handwriting, was a single line: "Do not disturb. He's still in the room." The call by Friday, the hotel was a bit busier. 2 couples had checked in earlier in the evening, and a middle-aged woman traveling for work was staying in room 210. Nothing unusual. It was just before 2 a.m. when the front desk phone rang. The sudden sound startled Eric, making him spill his coffee all over the counter. "Eliseo Residence, good evening." Silence. "Hello?" Breathing. Slow, shallow, like someone exhaling their last breath. "I need help." It was a man's voice, deep, dragging, like it was being forced from weak lungs. "Who is this? Which room are you in?" 3. 1. 3. Click. The line went dead. Eric stood there, still holding the phone, his mouth dry. Slowly, he set it down and checked the security feed. 3rd floor, empty hallway. He decided to go up. He took the master key with him, even though he already knew no one was supposed to be in room 313. He'd checked the log himself. Each step up the stairs felt like climbing out of a nightmare. The elevator groaned loudly behind him, rattling like old bones. When the doors opened on the 3rd floor, it was dead silent. A single light at the far end of the hall flickered weakly. Eric moved toward room 313. The door was closed. He took a deep breath and slowly turned the knob with the master key. It opened. Nothing. The room was dark. The window was cracked open, letting in a chill. In the corner, a small lamp was on, casting a pale glow across the bed, which was unmade. The pillow was sunken, like someone had just been lying there. Eric backed up. 2 careful steps. The door slammed shut behind him. He bolted, stumbled down the stairs, nearly tripping, locked himself inside the front office, stayed there frozen in place until dawn broke over the city. Loose lips. By Monday, Eric had had enough. He went straight to Mrs. Dwyer, the manager. He wanted answers. The old woman studied him carefully, clearly seeing how rattled he was. "What exactly do you want to know?" she asked quietly. "Who was Claude Noguera? What happened in 313? She sighed. "You really should have asked that before you signed up for the night shift." She paused, staring into her coffee. "Claude was a salesman, stayed here all the time, always chose 3 and 13. One Friday in 2009, he never left. He disappeared? He died." A chill raced down Eric's spine. "What do you mean, died?" "They said it was suicide. Found him in the bathtub, slit wrists. But something was off. His body was ice cold, the bathtub was dry, and there were no cuts, no bruises, just dead." She looked away, then continued. "After that, the staff started hearing things, doors opening, whispers upstairs. People said they saw him in the halls. Room 313 stayed closed for months. But the next manager didn't believe in that stuff. They reopened it. Why not just shut the room down permanently?" She gave him a sad smile. "Because nothing ever happens during the day. Nothing ever happens in sunlight." Part 3, The Presence Moves. The following nights were different, not because of noise, but because of the opposite. A thicker, denser silence, like the very air around the hotel had stopped moving. The kind of silence that makes your ears buzz. The kind of silence that feels like it's hiding something in the dark. Eric felt it the moment he stepped through the reception door. Even before his shift started, he would already feel nauseous. Headaches. The screens from the security cameras seemed darker than usual, like something was draining the light from the hallways. But it was on the following Thursday that room 313 stopped being just a distant number. That was when someone else entered the room and came out different. The girl from the second floor. Around 2 a.m. the phone rang. Eric answered, his heart already racing, used to expecting something strange. But this time, it was the guest from room 210. A young woman named Priscilla, in town for a job interview. Her voice was trembling. "Sir, someone's been knocking on my door for like 10 minutes. Did you see who it was?" "No. I looked through the peephole, but there was no one there, but the knocking kept going, sometimes harder." Eric checked the cameras. On the second floor, the hallway was black. The system was showing only a blank screen, like the camera had been shut off. But that was impossible. The cameras were wired into the internal system. They couldn't be turned off manually. "Stay calm, Miss Priscilla. I'm coming up." He grabbed the keys and headed up the stairs. When he got to the hallway, there was no one. The light was on, but dimmer, too yellow. Priscilla opened the door, her face still marked by fear. "Are you sure there's no one else on this floor?" "Absolutely. You're the only one checked in here." She hesitated. "But I saw him, I swear to God. A man, tall, wearing a dark suit. He walked past my door and then just stopped there." "And what happened next?" Priscilla looked down for a second, as if she had to build up the courage to say it. "He looked at me, but I couldn't see his face. It was just a shadow and he said something. But I couldn't understand." Eric tried to calm her down, but what she said next froze his blood. Before he disappeared, he reached out his hand and showed me a key. I think it was for 3 and 13. The silent invasion. The next day, something even stranger happened. At 3:07 a.m., the third-floor camera showed the door to room 313 slowly opening on its own. No one visible. No command in the system. A few minutes later, the elevator went down to the lobby and opened its doors. Eric didn't see anyone get out, but seconds later, the reception door creaked, as if someone had come in. Eric stood up slowly. The room was empty, but there was a draft of air coming from nowhere, and something else. The smell. A strong metallic odor, almost like blood. He walked over to the entrance. It was locked from the inside. No guest had passed through there. And then he saw it. On top of the reception counter was the key to room 313. But he was absolutely sure he had left it on the panel, secured with a lock. The lock was open, the key wet. When he touched it, something cold ran through his fingers. It wasn't just physical cold. It was a chill that felt like it came from inside, like he was touching something that had already died. Documents that shouldn't exist. The following night, Eric brought something from home, a small UV flashlight. He knew he was going too far, but he wanted to see if there were strange marks in room 313. He went up shortly after midnight, with the hotel practically empty. He entered the room, closed the door behind him, and turned off the lights. The flashlight revealed stains on the walls, spreading up to the ceiling, across the curtains, and a large mark on the carpet near the bed, as if something had been dragged there. But there was more. Writing. Small words, almost invisible, scribbled across the walls. This isn't a room. He's still here. The door opens both ways. And one of them on the bathroom mirror, written directly on the glass with some kind of marker. Claude was the first, losing control. The following week, Eric started suffering from blackouts. Sometimes he would blink and find himself in another room. One time, he woke up sitting in the lobby with the reception phone off the hook and a note written in his own handwriting. Check-in 0317, room 313, Mr. J.N. But he didn't remember answering any calls, and Mr. J.N. didn't match any registered guest. Roxanne started noticing his dark circles, his distracted look, his slow speech, and then she said, "You've been looking pale, Eric, and you've got this weird smell like salty." He didn't know what to say. He felt more and more disconnected from reality. The hotel seemed like a place suspended outside of time. Sometimes he was sure the clock at the front desk was ticking backward. Other reports. On an old forum online, Eric found something that kept him awake for 3 straight nights. A post dated from 2010 read, "Has anyone ever stayed at the Eliseo residence? I saw a man with no face on the 3rd floor. He was standing at room 313. I didn't try to go in. I just heard him say, 'If you knock, I'll open.' I left that same night, never went back." The post had no replies. The user had been inactive ever since.
Part 4, The Calling. The hours during the night shift started to lose meaning. Eric no longer knew what day it was. Guests came and went, but their faces always seemed the same. The same elderly woman in a lilac dress walked by every night at 11:12 p.m., carrying the same suitcase. The same couple argued in room 202. The same child ran down the hallway at 2:47 a.m., always alone. But when he checked the records, no one matching those descriptions was registered in the system, not even the child. The clock stopped at 3:13. Early Monday morning, something happened that, to Eric, sealed the fate of everything. He was at the front desk, head down, eyes barely staying open, when the phone rang. He answered, expecting yet another false alarm, another sleepwalking guest. But there was no sound on the other end, only slow, deep breathing, almost animal-like. And then a raspy voice whispered, "You already know what to do." The digital clock on the wall was frozen. It read exactly 3:13. He looked at the monitor showing the 3rd floor. The door to room 313 was slightly open. And for the first time, the light inside was on, and something even more terrifying. There was a silhouette sitting on the edge of the bed, motionless, looking directly at the door as if it was waiting for him. Roxanne tries to step in. The next day, Roxanne asked to speak with Eric before his shift started. "I called your mom, Eric. She said you've disappeared, that you haven't answered anyone for days." He tried to laugh it off, make a joke, but she grabbed his arm firmly. "Look at yourself. You're pale, sweating, trembling, and you've been talking to yourself at the front desk. This isn't normal." He didn't reply, just stared at her with empty eyes. And then he murmured, "Have you ever been inside 313, Roxanne?" She took half a step back. "That room's been sealed for years. No one's been in there since..." She stopped talking. Eric pressed, "Since when?" She hesitated, then said something that left him completely numb. "Since 1997, after my brother was found in there, hanged with the TV cord. The forbidden memories." Eric began searching through the cardboard boxes stored in the hotel's basement. Old files, ledgers, forgotten dusty records. And there, he found what he was looking for. A red folder labeled 313 Incidents. Inside, clippings from old newspapers, guest notes, blurry photographs, all talking about the same pattern: knocking sounds at 3 a.m., figures in the mirror, people who disappeared, screams reported by other guests, even when the room was supposed to be empty. And worse, names of guests who died after staying in that room: Claude, Annabelle, Donovan, J.N., and lastly, Eric Noguera. His name was already there, dated from this week. He dropped the folder to the floor. The final calling on Thursday at exactly 3 a.m., the reception area was engulfed in absolute silence. No wind, no cars, not even the ticking of the clock. The front doorbell rang, but when Eric looked, there was no one there. Just a brown envelope underneath the door. No name, no return address. Inside, there was a key, 313, and a note, written in delicate old-fashioned handwriting: "To return, you must enter." Entering the room. Eric went upstairs, ignoring the darkened hallways and the sensation that the walls were watching him. When he reached the third floor, the door to 313 was already slightly open. The light inside flickered, as if a candle was burning somewhere within. He pushed the door open and stepped inside. The atmosphere was colder than he expected, like he'd passed through an invisible membrane, a threshold between worlds. The room felt bigger on the inside. The walls were covered in marks, handprints, scratches, and on the bed, the silhouette. But now the figure was standing, its back turned, motionless. Eric took a step forward, and the figure spoke. "You've always been here." When it turned around, Eric didn't scream, not because he wasn't afraid, but because the figure was him. But not exactly. It was a distorted version. Empty eyes, torn mouth, a lifeless face. And the door closed behind him, by itself. The empty reception. The next morning, Roxanne arrived for her shift. The reception was empty, no sign of Eric. The key to room 313 was back on the panel. Dry, perfect, untouched. Roxanne called the manager. They called the police. They checked the cameras. But the recordings from that night were corrupted. There were no files from 2:55 a.m. to 4:17 a.m. No guests heard anything. No employee saw Eric leave. And even after everything, room 313 is still there, sealed, silent, and waiting.